Okay guys, out for a toodle on the Royal Enfield Super Meteor. Not been out on it for a couple of weeks, been busy with the DSX over there. Let's fire her up. Yeah, sweet little bike to ride. Only 650 air-cooled twin, but super smooth. Apart from this rear suspension, I'll talk about that as we get going. Right, so onward and upward. So again, we've got a load of wind. It's getting up in the afternoon, about 2:30 or so in the afternoon. 2 o'clock it's saying on the clock, but I'm not sure if that's right. Have a look. Yeah, I've said in other videos, it's a sweet little bike to ride, really. The only caveat is the rear suspension, which is rock solid. And one of my previous videos, one of you guys recommended a French company making rear shocks for a plethora of bikes, this little Super Meteor being one of them. Anyway, looked on the site, I think the rear shocks, fully adjustable, are around €500, or if you want the anodized black ones, they're about 560, 570. So yeah, I'm trying to sell the Suzuki V-Strom at the moment, or I'm going to sell the Suzuki V-Strom, I should say. So get some more funds back in the bank and spend a bit more on the Super Meteor, get this rear suspension sorted out, and maybe a backrest for the wife. I don't want to change it too much. I like it pretty much how it is. So you can see what I'm saying about the suspension. Absolutely bonkers. I mean, this road is pretty rough, but I'm trying to run along the white line in the middle, which is probably the most interrupted part of the road. Yeah, so it's apart from the rear suspension, it's such a beautiful little bike to ride. In fact, the crazy thing is what am I doing? 50 kilometers an hour. I'm in 5th gear. The torque on it is absolutely bonkers, guys. So this is pulling in, there's no rev counter on it, so you don't actually know what you're doing. But it's certainly not bobbling the engine or balking. It's very torquey from low down, and you can certainly toodle around without doing a lot of gear changing, no problem. If I twist the throttle, you can see it's picking up quite steadily from about 50 kph upwards in 5th gear. So yeah, just around this corner there's a smoother stretch of road, and you can see that on well paved roads it's pretty much okay. It behaves itself, I should say. So another thing I was saying in a previous video, the gearbox is so smooth. Apart from the indicator on the dash, you pretty much don't know what gear you're in. You know, it's the gear change is very smooth, especially going up. Yes, sweet little thing to ride. And then one of them chill out rides you get on now and again. I'm sorry about the wind, guys, if it's buffeting on the microphone. The microphone is hidden behind the front part of this open face helmet, but I can certainly hear a lot of wind noise in my ears anyway. Yeah, I was going to say, it's one of them bikes you can just get on and ride so easily. Although it's the same weight as the DSX, it's 240 kilograms wet weight, so it's a heavy little bike. But that's part and parcel of the charm. It's all steel built, there's no plastic on it. So yeah, all in all, it's a sweet little ride. There's a third gear corner. Probably could have changed down into second there. Yeah, so I was going to say, guys, any of you guys who've swapped out the rear suspension, bearing in mind I don't know how bad your roads are, but ours are pretty notorious in the countryside here. Motorways and normal roads are okay. Any of you guys who've swapped out the rear suspension, the shower suspension on the back for a more adjustable, softer shock, I don't know whether you get any more travel on the shock because they're pretty short as it is. But hit me up in the comments below and let me know how comfortable it's made the rear end of the bike. I think part and parcel of the bike as well is the fact that we've got these forward facing pegs. So you're putting a lot more weight on your lower back, your legs are facing forwards. A lot of hazards and bumps on the road, certainly on mid-mounted pegs, you can take your weight off the seat a little bit. Lots of tree roots on the road here. Way. So you can see things like that really can jar your back quite badly if you're not watching out for them. One thing that's very noticeable, especially coming off the DSX, is how smooth the throttle is on this. Now, the crazy thing is this throttle is a cable throttle. It's not fly-by-wire. There's no riding modes on this. But silky smooth, no throttle snatch whatsoever, smooth as butter. In fact, it's very smooth. Gear change is very smooth. So it's a shame that you've got a bike that's got a tried and tested engine by Lonsin, an engine from the F900 XR range. It's been out a few years, that engine and gearbox, but if you go on the BMW F900 XR forums, you'll see many posts about the gearbox and the clunky gearbox and the gear change. And one of the main comments on there, especially about the F900 XR, is how clunky the first gear changes on a wet clutch bike in general, not just on the Lonsin engine. Even on this, in first gear, when you put it in, there's a noticeable clunk into first, and all wet clutches have that feature, or behave that way, I should say. Yeah, so the forums are generally littered with, am I damaging my bike because the gear change is very clunky and audible, and each gear change is a definite thud into gear, and the general consensus is not. And when I was looking at a few of these forums, the general consensus is that you learn to adapt to ride the Lonsin 900 engine in a way where you can get more clutch control and more of a smoother gear change. And it was quite strange because I'd always thought like a longer bite on the clutch. So if you've got more pull on the clutch lever on the engine side, it's going to put more pressure on the clutch plate to release it, so you get a smoother gear change and changeover. But a lot of guys on the forum were actually saying that a short shift, so pulling the clutch lever in only a small amount and a quick shift, they were getting more of a smoother gear change. I don't know whether that's a true thing or not. I've always pulled the clutch all the way in if I'm changing gear and then let it out. Now this bike along this section here, now I've come off tarmac and I'm on sort of old tarmac gravel that's been eroded over the years, and this stretch is notoriously bumpy. Not a problem on the DSX or anything like that, just 21-inch front wheel just sails over it. Yeah, a few noticeable things with the changes I've made on the DSX. One of them being the handlebar raisers have been a great asset for a more comfortable ride. But one thing I would make note of, or make a comment about with the higher bars, and someone did comment during the comments as well, as if you're doing a lot of off-roading on the DSX, it changes the centre of balance, if you like. When you're leaning forward on an off-road bike, you're putting more weight on that front wheel and giving it a bit more stability, especially on loose corners and loose turns. So some guy had said that he'd been on one of these off-road adventure courses, and they were saying that in some cases bar rises were a bad thing. Now I suppose that's could be a factor if you're doing a lot of off-roading, because most of us who have the DSX will not be doing a great deal of off-roading. It's more road orientated, I would think, the DX and off-road, but it is capable. It is a dual adventure bike where you could go off-roading with it, not a problem. So that may be an issue. For me, the extra 30mm on the razors going up and coming back towards me has made a considerable difference, to be honest. But what I was going to say, I've gone slightly off topic there. What I was going to say is that one thing you really need to look out for on the DSX, once you raise those bars up another 30mm, is that when you're manoeuvring the bike in your garage, in your parking space or whatever, it's very noticeable how high the bars become once you've taken them up an extra 30mm. Doesn't sound a lot, but when you're holding the bars and you're manoeuvring the bike, you're holding a very high centre of gravity, and you've got to be aware that if you're reaching across the bike as you're manoeuvring it, ideally you want some cover on that front brake, especially if you're going backwards and there's a slight slope, or even forwards down a slope. You need to be aware that there's a lot of weight in the bike and you need control of it on that brake, and it's quite hard to reach over when you stood alongside the bike to get a good contact and a good manageable position on the bike. What I tend to do, and you shouldn't really do, is I hold the clutch side bar and I hold the rear grab bar at the back, and I tend to manoeuvre it that way. The problem with that, when you're moving that way, if you're on flat ground, it's not a problem at all. If you're on a slight slope and you're using the clutch side and you're using the rear grab rail to move it about, if you're on a slight slope, you've got no way of stopping that bike rolling down the slope, because both of your brakes on the other side, your foot brakes on the other side, and your front brake is on the other side, obviously for the hand position. So you've got to take all these factors into account and be aware where you're going to park the bike, where you're parking the bike if you're going to park on an uphill slope and you have to back out, because a lot of the parking spaces you ride into, and then obviously you lift it off the side stand and you want to back it out. Again, you need some cover on that front brake, especially if it's on a slight hill going backwards. So, yeah, it's just little things to note, really, and I would advise as well, when you come, we should all know, we all do know, but little things catch us out on a bike that's high up in a high centre of gravity. Now, when you're riding the DSX, it's a dream to ride, to be honest. It's very, very easy to ride. For a heavy, high up bike, it's a nice bike to get around on. But again, when you come into a stop and you come into a parking position, if you can't totally flat foot that bike, and I can get one foot totally on the ground and the other one I'm just on the ball of my foot, you need to be looking where you're parking at the gradient of the ground, especially if it slopes away to the right side. It means the left side, even though it leans over a good way on the side stand, the left-hand side, you're not going to get the side stand down with a sufficient amount of weight on it to get off the bike safely. If you're on a camber and your feet don't touch the ground on your balance side on the camber, there's a chance that the bike could go over on you. Likewise, if you come into a junction, a stop junction, and you've got the handlebars locked over either way because it's a turn junction, again, be very careful, guys, because once you've got the handlebar turned in either direction, the centre of gravity gets moved to the direction you're facing, and the bike wants to fall that way, so you've got a lot of weight on it. So there are things you need to take into consideration with an adventure bike, especially if you're coming from something else and you've not ridden an adventure bike. I mean, you're only going to get caught out once. If you do it once and you get past that tipping point, the bike will go over very, very slowly. You'll end up lying on the ground because you won't keep it up once it goes past a certain point. but you'll only do it once. I did it on the V-Strom a long while back, and we were two up going out on a ride. I had Leslie on the back on pillion. We had a lot of luggage in the side cases, so the bike was very, very heavy. We came along a country road like this, and I was turning right, and there was the camber was sloping to the right. So as I came to the right and I went to put my right foot down, the bike leant over a fairway because that was the way I was going to turn. And I could feel it going. I knew it was going to go. And I said to Leslie, we're going over slow. It was very, very slow. It didn't cause any damage to the bike. It just left me with a bit of egg on my chin and a bit embarrassed, really, checking around to see if anyone had seen what I'd done. But yeah, you only get caught out once, guys. But it is something to take into account that you've got a heavy bike with a high centre of gravity, and you need to be able to keep that bike pretty much upright and get your foot on the ground if you get into trouble. So guys, it was just a bit of a waffle and a bit of a blow the cobwebs ride for me today, getting out on the Super Meteor. I've not gone far, I've probably done about 5 or 6 kilometres. I'm going to go home now and have my Sunday lunch, but it's one of these bikes that I can get on this bike, and it's one of my therapy bikes, if you like. If I want to get out toodle and have a bit of therapy, this is a bike I jump onto. And the reason I jump onto it is for all of the reasons I've just mentioned. It's the same weight as the DSX, but your feet are flat on the ground. It's a very, very low bike, cruiser style if you like, very easy to ride. Don't have to think about riding it. You can think about almost the meditation of the ride and enjoying the ride in your surroundings, apart from the rear suspension that I mentioned before. But if any of you guys have done the rear suspension on your Super Meteor and you've put a shock on, let me know. If any of you guys have put the French shock on, I'll leave the link to the website in the annotations below, because I can't remember the company or the website, but I'll leave a link to it below. If you've put that shock on, that's the one I'm seriously considering buying, as opposed to the one from Hitchcock's. Let me know, reach out and tell me how it handles, and if it's made much of a difference for you if you ride solo or two up, and give me your thoughts and feedback. So guys, as always, ride safe, look after yourself, and I'll catch you in the next one. Peace out, guys.